Hello everyone, welcome to the first ever Yoka session. I'm Yogesh.
And I'm Karthik. And this is an extension of our day-to-day coffee conversations that we have at our workplace.
And those coffee conversations have now led us to start Yoka Sessions. I look forward to your feedback and in fact, more questions and topics that we can cover. With that, let's get started. What are we talking about today, Karthik?
So Yogesh, the first thing we'll talk about, let me revisit my career. So one of the mistakes I made in my early career was I had to finish every task as soon as it was assigned. I had to solve every problem immediately. This got me into a bit of a quandary. I was like, how do I prioritize things? Like, do I choose A over B? Do I choose this customer over that customer? Which problem is a bigger problem to solve? Which is a smaller problem to solve? It left me in a bit of a soup. And I found the challenge even bigger as I started leading a team. It's a continuous process. Do you feel that, Yogesh?
The most common thing that I actually hear from people is how flustered they are with work and with words like hustle and multitasking thrown our way. It's just increasing all the more. More often than not, I'll start off with the kind of questions we get, right? With our teams coming and saying, hey, you know what, this customer came to me and told me that I have 10 things to do. And when I ask them what is the priority, they say all 10 are priority. And I go back to them and saying, if everything is a priority, basically nothing is a priority, right? So at the onset, it's actually very important to set priorities and fill your calendar with priorities and not the other way around, right?
That's a good line, Yogesh. And it just reminded me of the coffee conversation we had like a week or a month, I think it was a month back. And I told you about this customer who said, I wanted something yesterday, to which you responded.
If I got $1 for every time a customer said, I want something yesterday, I'd have been a very rich man today.
That is true. And you also had another line which I really liked is, if you wanted something yesterday, guess what, you should have told it to me day before yesterday. But time travel is not invented, folks, so this is still a bit of a problem. But that was an interesting line that reminded me of this particular topic.
Where I was getting to with this, Karthik, was the ability to set the right expectations, right? I understand there are a lot of things and we are in a business where we are customer facing, and with these customer facing roles come its own set of challenges with different customers because every customer has a different business use case. Having said that, it's very, very important to understand what has to happen now and what has to happen later. Setting the right expectations makes the most sense, right? If we are not managing our calendar right, we can get flustered, and that's the first step, right?
So you walk into the room and you deal with 10 particular escalations, 3 internal, 7 external. What do you do, right? If you're a paramedic, every prioritization comes at a cost. But in customer experience, everything need not be solved immediately. If you look at perspective, some are rocks which you need to get out of your way, and some are pebbles which could trickle down to the next particular day. If we start looking at our tasks and prioritize what is immediately important and what could probably be pushed by a day, we would see our mental productivity enhance and our space to do more with less. Right? So that's where I'm coming from, Yogesh.
You know, this made me think of that quote. I'm not too sure if I'm saying it correctly. You don't prioritize your calendar, but fill your calendar with priorities.
I'm going to see an auto rickshaw with the sticker sometime.
So that's point number one, I would say, is the most important thing, the ability to set expectations and prioritize in terms of what are your rocks and what are your pebbles.
Yep.
But that snowballed into something you just mentioned, Karthik. The ability for someone to actually feel comfortable to tell their boss this.
That is true.
I've heard so many cases that people are actually not comfortable telling their boss that they have a lot of work, right? On one side, you have people who are hungry to grow up then, want to take on more and do something a lot more efficiently. On the flip side, the person is not very comfortable at asking these questions, right? I think it's such an irony there, right? So creating an environment where a boss can just go to any of their team member or vice versa and say, hey, you know what? Are you feeling overwhelmed, or I am feeling a little too overwhelmed? How do I do this? Or how do I do this more efficiently, right? And that's a very, very good space to be in, right?
If you look at saying, if you look at telling your boss that I'm overworked or I'm not able to prioritize between my tasks, I need help, as a sign of vulnerability, I think that's what makes us human. So that's what makes us different from AI, right? So, and it's the quest for vulnerability, for solving vulnerabilities that makes us get better at our jobs, right? So if you want to get more productive, you need to be able to see noise and signal differently. And I think for that, we gotta have the culture where we go and speak and ask for help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, this changes a bit, right? Today we're in a office environment where there is 100% work from office, a hybrid culture, and there are remote teams, right? And we work in an office that has all three structures of business,
Tell me about it.
right? So this also brings with its own sets of challenges. One team comparing themselves to the other versus how do I get to work with someone who's working remotely efficiently, right? If this is what we're doing, again, prioritizing helps a lot because in office you have the capacity to just have a water cooler conversation or just go across the room and say, hey, I need some help with this. Versus a person who's working remotely is going to be a Zoom call or a phone call at the bare minimum. That requires you to set aside some time, and that's very important, right? So this is something that we should also maneuver and take on a case-to-case basis.
So yoga is not just different teams. Sometimes it's different geographies. Like people work in different locations in different shifts, and a lot of work styles are now asynchronous. So it's not always important for you to be at a beck and call for someone's ping. But I've told my teams, like imagine the life of a support agent, right? You're sitting and staring at a pane, and every person who's talking to you or yelling at you is having a concern, and that's a pretty stressful job. And how do they prioritize? And imagine as a customer experience person, you're pinging a support agent, and you want to be taken up seriously. You need to be more than just a notification, right? So I've told my teams, like, go and spend time, try to invest and build a face-to-face connect with the team. Let them know who you are. That really helps. So, I mean, it's a small hack, even if you're a hybrid or a remote person. Like if you're working and collaborating with teams in office, just make the effort to go and establish a relationship. Like we need to put a face to the notification, and that really helps in not just you prioritizing the task, but you need to collaborate with the person who needs to prioritize your task.
That makes, it's funny you say that, Karthik, because we focus so much on doing this externally with our customers to create an independent personality no matter where you are in this world, because of course we work with customers from across the globe, right? And we forget to do that internally.
Correct.
Right, and this is not a balancing act. I think it's absolutely important to do it with everyone.
And coming back to the point of setting expectations, like you can only set expectations when you have a clear definition of your personality and what you need and what you don't need. And that definition needs to not just be internal but also external. So whether it's with your customers, whether it's with stakeholders and other teams, if you don't have a clear expression of your personality, I think it becomes difficult to set expectations.
So that's the second most important point, right, Karthik? For managers and people leaders, to create a culture that opens up to you and perhaps ask for help, and you're there for them. And the best of managers have never delegated something like this. They've always got their hands dirty, and have always helped them get through, right? And if it's a lot, it's a lot. We should first accept it, and then say, for this team, for this person, this is their skill set, and this is how much they can do. And we should be mindful about the kind of work we give and the amount of work we give each person, right? And because they are going to be judged on the success of each one of them, and we have to make them successful.
Yeah, we got to set up everyone for success. That's definitely a thing. And let's all pause and take a look at ourselves. And we're not the Avengers, and even the Avengers were beaten by Thanos, right? So it's okay to face adversity at work. It's okay to miss few deadlines. It's okay if you're not able to do everything in one shot, because not everything needs to be done in one shot, right? And that's the humanness of jobs. And sometimes I think in the
and technically you will not miss a deadline if you set the right expectations.
Correct. So
right. So yeah.
So that's the trick, guys. So if you don't want to miss deadlines, make sure to set the right expectations with your boss or your customers. And that's what works for Yogesh 9 out of 10 times.
I would say the next, or something which is actually a little more important than what we said right now, is the ability to define the problem. Right.
That is true.
So is the problem really the problem? And if you actually look into those 10 things that you are worried about, you'll realize that there are a few redundancies. And that's something that we need to look at. The ability to break it down and define the problem really well will also help you solve the problem really well, right? In perhaps lesser time, or maybe it's not your job, maybe it's somebody else's job, right? And you just have to get the work done from somebody else, and vice versa, right? Hey, this person is really good at doing something. Why don't we just ask that person to help me with it? We can go from there, right? So, Karthik, you have a fairly large team, right? You have like a 40-member team,
Yep.
right? And this must be happening. So, how do you handle it?
So part of it is to disconnect yourself from the problem, and if you're emotionally invested in the problem and it affects you, it does affect the way you think, and you get attached to either the solution or the problem itself. So,
Analysis paralysis. How many times have we done that? I'm guilty of it myself. and and perhaps something that my boss always tells me, and constructive feedback. If my boss is watching, point taken.
Yeah. So I mean, the point is, it's. I mean, a couple of ways we can look at it. One is to take a step back and look at the problem or problem statement with a different perspective. Sometimes it's good to get peers help, because they, like for example, someone who handles a different market or a different functionality, or who basically handles my customer segment but in different function. They come with fresh perspectives and less bias. So sometimes the answer is just staring at our face and we just miss it, right? So that has happened a couple of times to me. Second thing is, I work with my set of leaders, and we all get into like a war room kind of situation. That's a phrase that we love in corporate, war room.
Wow.
Wow, I know. In war rooms, when we look at the problem set and we identify what is the problem actually, it helps us identify the 2 or 3 critical steps, because instead of doing 10 things, you can't do 10 things. Like you have to focus on 2 or 3 aspects and do it at scale and do it efficiently. And these 2-3 things can be identified only if you define the problem statement clearly. And once you do that, you get good narratives. And leaders who have been in QBRs, who are preparing for the next QBRs, you guys know narrative is everything, right? So as a people leader or leading a large business unit, we face problems on a day-to-day basis. I mean, that's the job. But just like our teams face the challenge of what to prioritize, what not to prioritize, the same thing goes pretty much for us, right? And one of the best ways for leadership to solve this challenge is to learn the art of delegation. Because if everything has to be done by you, then why do you need a team? A cricket team is defined by 11 players. You have a captain, vice captain, wicket keeper. Sometimes the captain and wicket keeper are the same thing. But I'm not making a CSK reference here, guys. But we need everyone to take part in whatever is the game. Like the function needs to be just be functioning as a unit. So for that, I think delegation is a key. I think Richard Branson has told that. I think delegation is an art, and I think that is a very, very underrated concept, which many young leaders make the mistake of taking too much on their plate.
When I look back at when I led the team for the first time, I was actually micromanaging, right? I wasn't letting them do their work. I wasn't doing that super efficiently, and then I realized that my process itself was wrong. And that's when, you need to actually just step back and look at things happen and say, does that really require me to put my hands into this? And that person can do it better than me. So you should just let them do it, right? And if they get into trouble, you're right there. I think that's also a CSK reference. Make no mistake, as managers, we are still accountable for it, right? But the art is in how we're getting it done.
I mean, if you want to teach someone to swim, you got to be in the water, but you can't swim for them, right? So,
True, Karl.
And I think my wife would be very proud about this, because she's a swimmer, by the way. But anyway, if you're watching the video. Now that we've been speaking about how to prioritize, deprioritize, define problems, set open cultures, we talk about all these things, but these are day-to-day challenges that we face in our role in customer experience teams. And one of the best ways to beat a bucket load of tasks is with good productivity hacks. So do you use any tools, or like what do you do to be more productive apart from going to the gym?
For me, Karthik, that was good old Excel at one point. And then we realized that that's not the most efficient. All the Excel haters, you definitely would have hated me, right? But we moved on to better project management tools. And those project management tools help us not micromanage or not be perceived as micromanagers, because they're getting it done, right? So I'm super dependent on project management tools in terms of how I manage my teams. How do you do it?
I look at Kanban boards. It helps me prioritize my tasks and what is on hold, what is due, what is overdue, and that view definitely helps me get to my job function a lot and serve customers better. Apart from that, I do have an OCD for clearing old emails. I'm getting conscious as I'm even talking about it, guys, but yeah, my personal and official emails put together has probably got less than 2,000 emails. So
wow.
I like to get tasks done.
Clearly.
Yeah.
I guess those are our top points, Karthik. I think just to summarize, spoke about 5 things to do. First, set the right expectations. Create a culture where people are open to coming up to you and saying that, hey, we're feeling overwhelmed. Third, prioritizing tasks. Basically, understand your rocks and pebbles. Fourth, clearly define your problem, because knowing the problem is half the solution in itself. And fifth, identify your own productivity hacks. To everyone their own. I started with Excel, moved on to project management tools. You start using Kanban methods, and of course, you have no 100 emails, which is shocking by any means.
And just to top up on the fifth point, right? It's not just productivity hacks, but also productivity zones. Some of you would be morning people. Some of you would be night owls. Some of you function better with a cup of coffee. Some of you like to do work listening to music. It's fine, but find what makes you grow. So basically, you want to attempt to clear your rocks when you're most productive time. So if you're a morning person, don't keep your most important task for the evening, right? So it's a very simple thing, but you'll be amazed how many people miss something as simple as this.
Correct. Well, thanks for this, Karthik. I am supremely nervous because this is our first. I've never done this before. I'm just getting out of my comfort zone. I'm looking forward to the feedback that we get for this show. Also, I want to stay motivated and try this. As uncomfortable as I am, I think we should just keep doing this for some time to see until we're not uncomfortable, and we'll go from there. With that, thank you for joining us for the first ever Yoka session, and I look forward to the next. See ya.
Peace.